Welcome to the Gals Guide to the Galaxy podcast, where a group of gals gather for you one cool thing around our topic of the month. Is it ancient history? Is it breaking news? Is it safe for work? Well, that's up to each gal. All we know is that...
Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy night.
Welcome back. I'm Katie, and I'm joined by Leah, Bonnie, and Eden talking about our one cool disabled gal. Bonnie already talked about Tammy Duckworth. Mm-hmm. Eden told us about Annie Jump Cannon. And Leah just filled us in about the heroic efforts of Judy Human.
Yes.
Soon, I will be introducing you to another amazing woman.
Yay.
Yes. But first, I want to get your perspective on something.
Okay.
And this is a little bit of a sensitive subject. I'm going rogue.
Yeah.
Off the script questions. I know, the absolute panic.
Why did I even write script questions?
And I think we're all going to get to the same consensus with this answer.
Okay.
But it's a little bit of a very current thing that I feel like is being discussed in the disability world.
Okay.
And that's if it should be person first versus identity first language. So there have been all kinds of terms throughout our history, and some have been deemed offensive.
Okay. Yeah.
I think like the core of everything is we need to listen to the people who have these disabilities or these different experiences.
Yeah.
But I would say maybe like 10, 15 years ago, it became proper to say, my name is Katie. I am an individual with anxiety disorder. Yeah. So you're putting I'm myself first. Mm-hmm. Here's my challenge or disability second.
Right.
But there's a huge movement right now of people saying, hey, you cannot separate my disability from who I am. It's part of who I am. And I have pride in this. So I want you to use identity first language. And I guess what I'm saying is I just kind of want to know everybody's comfort level and thoughts on this change in language.
My first thought is whatever somebody tells me they want, that's what I'm going to do.
Right.
When it comes to identity, when it comes to pronouns, when it comes to disability, when it comes to, hey, you know what? This week I want to change my name. Like, I'm all about it. I might forget a couple of times because I'm human and I drink. But.
Yeah. Well, here's my question, because I'm an awkward person.
Yeah.
How do you get to that point?
I usually
straight up ask somebody?
I sometimes ask. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I mean, not every single person, but I mean, I will when I'm really kind of getting to know somebody, or especially if I'm about to, introduce somebody, you know what I mean? Like somebody else comes into the room and I want to introduce and be like, how would you like to be introduced? And that's when an opportunity is for me to learn. I've taken a lot more opportunities to ask. And I know that's something that I haven't done in the last couple of years is ask. A friend of mine who was a professional hugger at one point, like had a certification and like a training program. She taught me to ask if somebody wants a hug. I'm one of those people that just go in there. You know this, Katie. I just start hugging because I just assume that everybody's cool with it. And I realized, wait a minute, some people have had trauma and don't want me up in their business. Mm-hmm. So instead, I put my arms out and I say, would you like a hug? In other words, I'm coming for you. You have a couple of seconds to say no. Dodge. And I will respond if it's a no and pull myself back in. So that is my learning.
But if you had to pick your own default, say you didn't personally know somebody, but you professionally had to introduce them. Yeah. What do you think you'd fall back on?
Oh, I don't know.
Right?
Right.
It's a complicated issue, and it should come down to the individual person.
I feel my fallback is...
But if we're going to educate somebody on, like, a default, what should it be?
I mean, I love a first name.
Okay.
I always tend to go with a first name. Is a lot of our identity, is a lot of our self-imposedness, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I mean, we don't even say Eden has a last name, because Eden is Eden, you know what I'm saying?
I don't even say my last name.
Exactly.
I just say I'm Eden and keep it moving.
Right.
If you're lucky, I'll say I'm like Rihanna and Cher and Madonna.
Exactly.
Eden.
And you keep it all inside.
And I keep it inside.
It's one of those things. Because I think at one point I said, how do you want to be introduced? And you're like, just Eden is fine. So that's what I've been doing, like, since you told me. I'm like, you'll tell me another way if it ever changes. I don't care.
And I think that's why I'm not sure how to answer your question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because, and this is going to sound really weird.
Be it, it's weird.
But it's me. I'm totally straight up weird. As a racial and ethnic minority.
Yeah.
I'm a black chick, in case you didn't know that. I tend to people of color know that they're let me say it this way. Black people. People want to act like black is only a race.
Gotcha.
And that it's not also a cultural group.
Right.
And so it's very easy for people to say, well, I don't see color, or, you know, it doesn't matter what race somebody is, I'm going to treat them the same way, regardless. Right. Which is all, you know, treat me, you know, well, just like you treat everybody else.
Sure.
But for me, being black is my culture.
Yeah.
And it's my history. And it's my, it's part of how I self-identify.
And you want people to see it.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, just like being a woman.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a chick. I'm a chick. I got junk in the trunk.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Doesn't always fit in a bathtub, as we were talking about earlier.
So I come at the whole thing kind of differently, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Because I can't divorce the fact that I'm black and female from the fact that I'm Eden.
Yeah.
Because it, pun intended, colors my entire world. And when I worked with deaf people, I realized there's a lot of similarities between deaf culture and black culture because they're both marginalized communities. They're both, you know, there's a lot of oppression. There's a lot of denial of your language and your history and your, you know, fill in the blank. You know, black people, deaf people, and Native Americans. Yeah. Indigenous Americans.
Oh,
you know, have a lot of those similarities. And deaf people, you know, they are deaf. Yeah. Or they are hard of hearing.
Yeah.
Don't use hearing impaired because they hate that.
Gotcha.
Because impaired implies that they can't do something. And they can do everything. They just can't hear. I mean, and depending on, you know, how much hearing loss has occurred.
Yes, yeah.
You know, some people can actually hear a little bit more than other people. Okay. So for me, you know, my deaf friends, they're deaf. Yeah. They might also be Marcia or Steve or what, you know, whomever, but it's all part of what makes them them. Yeah. Yeah. So I can't divorce what somebody is from who somebody is.
Yeah.
I think you just gave a beautiful explanation of kind of where the movement's going with disability awareness. And I think part of the reason that's happening is because we're hearing from people who actually have disabilities and have lived this experience.
Right.
Because I think we've kind of gone from a lot of like maybe parents or caregivers advocating to the spaces
this is what
opened
my
up
child
for people
needs.
who actually have disabilities.
Quote unquote, the experts.
The experts, right? The doctors, that kind of stuff. So I feel like that's why that's happening. And I love hearing these perspectives because I've kind of been outside of that group as kind of one of the caregivers. Yeah. So it's very hard for me to get used to this because I've been very much trained in person first language.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
So it's really cool to hear this perspective and raise my comfort level with that. Yeah. And my kind of ability to be an advocate and saying, you know, if that's what makes you and makes you feel good, then that's what I'm going to use.
Right. Yeah. And I basically fall back on the same thing you do.
Gotcha. Yeah.
You know, ask the question.
What do you need? Yes. You know, how do you want to be represented? Exactly. Am I being an advocate?
Exactly. Yeah. You know, okay, you've got some hearing loss, you have hearing aids. Do you identify as deaf? Do you identify as hard of hearing?
Right.
Yeah.
Are you capitalized deaf or are you lowercase d deaf?
Right, exactly.
You know, like, you know, and then that becomes how I introduce them or how I interact with them or whatever. Because I'm used to, because I'm a light-skinned black chick, I look kind of Hispanic, kind of, you know, Puerto Rican, to the point where people will come up to me and just automatically speak Spanish. And then when I tell them, I don't speak Spanish. No hablo español.
French.
They look at me funny.
Right,
Like,
exactly. Wait,
what?
We coded you a certain way.
Yes, and then they
Yeah.
come back in like American accent,
Mhm.
English.
Right.
And it's like, okay. So it's just, I know that that's a thing.
Yeah.
I'm used to people asking me, do I prefer black or do I prefer African American?
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I text black because
Right.
it's shorter.
Fair. Fair.
When I was teaching my also light-skinned biracial son,
Mhm.
he couldn't understand why I would call myself black
Right.
when my shade of skin is not all that different from like my husband's or my stepson's.
Right.
So for him, I taught him African American and biracial
Right.
because that was easier for him to understand.
Yes, exactly.
So,
yeah, and
just a
he's
thing.
going to choose and evolve and
Find
continue
his own
that.
identity.
Right.
Yeah.
Continue
Yes.
that conversation and that idea.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I think this goes further into just proving that what really is the key to everything is having conversations
Yes.
and dialogue with
Mhm.
people
Yes.
and learning about them.
Yeah.
Because
And-
you just don't know without asking.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And don't make assumptions.
Yes.
Asking
Yeah.
prevents the assumptions.
Mhm.
Yep. Exactly.
Funny.
I'm gonna say this is a challenge though, because I am
No,
yes.
word.
Yeah. But yeah, ask the people and just don't be a dick.
Yeah. The
Like-
Will Wheaton
Yeah.
rule of the
Come on,
world.
Bonnie
Yes.
Don't
brings
be
it
a
round.
Mhm. Exactly.
But yeah, and
That
then
needs to be
you
a bumper
can't
sticker.
just because someone I know goes by deaf, that doesn't mean that everyone
Yes.
goes by deaf. Like
Right.
you have to ask each person
Yeah.
individually.
And we ask each person their name when we meet
Mhm.
them, right? So
I was
this
going
is
to say, this
another.
isn't a trial. This is just part
Right.
of getting
Yeah.
to know somebody.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And don't you want to know? I want to say the whole person, but I
Mhm.
mean,
Yeah.
I need to come in phases. Okay. You can't learn all of me all at once. It's a bit much. So, the phases of getting to know somebody. And I always have nicknames for people, like Bon Bon.
Mhm.
And I always try out these nicknames and I'll be like, are they okay with it? Are they fine with it? And then I keep at it and be like, the second you're not fine with it, nicknames start changing.
So what was Barb's?
Rarb is rhubarb still.
Nice.
Everybody's kind of a food nickname. I think I have a problem.
I'm nickname proof, though.
You are nickname
I'm-
proof.
Always have
She's
been.
Actually,
provider of the
you've been
food.
neighbor Katie, actually. If I really...
that sounds
I
lame.
know. But I always end up saying my
disavow
neighbor...
it.
My neighbor Katie.
Okay. I am
Yeah.
your neighbor.
Exactly. I mean, you were K-Tay for a while. Does that count?
I guess.
I mean, I was mostly drunk when I would say it.
As I am now, so I should get to the heart of the matter. 'cause
Okay,
I
sorry,
have
yes.
An amazing
Oh, I'm
gal for
sorry.
you
Yes,
guys.
no, we'll work on the nickname
This has
shiz
been
later.
an incredible conversation. I think it's good for people to
Yes.
hear
Yes.
because there's
Yeah.
so much. People are so in their head about this kind of stuff. At least I know I am.
Yeah.
So I think it's good.
It's good to be malleable
talk to
and
other
think
people.
about it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So because I'm just always so worried about offending people.
Gotcha.
So
Don't
I
worry
wanna
about it.
tread lightly.
We're gonna do it regards.
I think what people really want is just an honest dialogue.
Yes, exactly. Yes, to come from a intentional place
Yeah.
of not being hurtful,
Right.
and then
Yes.
just being
Right.
an idiot sometimes.
I
I'm
basically
pointing at
tell-
myself.
Yes, and I've told students, there's it's better to ask
Mhm.
than
To assume.
Assume.
and
Mhm.
as long as you're asking respectfully
Yeah.
and with a real desire to learn the answer,
Yes.
Yeah.
you really can't be offensive.
Mhm.
Right.
If someone is going to
Good.
be offended by your sense of respect,
Yeah.
To quote Bon Bon,
Bon Bon.
they're just a jerk.
Brilliant.
Need to work that out.
Yes.
All right.
Okay, who do you have for
Well,
us?
it's
K-Tay.
funny we just spoke for so
Yeah,
long.
It's not working. Yeah.
because I actually am going to introduce you to
Yeah.
a non-speaking individual.
Oh, nice.
Non-speaking, of course, does not mean non-communicating.
Right.
Yes,
absolutely.
absolutely.
Yeah. Especially in
Ah.
today's age. Oh my gosh.
Exactly.
Right. So I'm going to be talking about Jordyn Zimmerman.
Okay.
She's a non-speaking autistic advocate for inclusive education and augmentative communication supports for other non-speaking individuals.
Wow.
Amazing.
That's
She absolutely is, especially when you
Sweet.
get to know some of her background.
Yes.
until the age of 18,
Yeah.
Jordyn was assumed to be incompetent of communication, thought, just really kind of any
Wow.
interaction with the world.
Oh, till she was 18?
Till she was 18 years old, she had
Aw.
virtually no voice.
Oh my gosh.
And currently she is 28.
Mm.
So we're
Oh,
talking about
wow.
somebody that 10 years ago finally was able to discover their voice and communicate with other people.
Wow.
And in that 10-year period, she is just rocketed forward in being an advocate,
Mhm.
being an inspiration, and just being a super incredible person.
Nice. Yeah,
So
yeah.
when she was 18 years old, she was still in the school system, being segregated from her peers, not attending the same classes as them, frequently being put in restrictive holds because of her behavior,
Oh, gotcha.
or trying to elope from the school building
oh.
with no avenue for communication.
Oh, wow.
She
Wow.
spent her days secluded from others, doing repetitive math problems like simple addition and things like that, because all of her experience and testing in the school system led her teachers and the professionals she interacted with to believe that she had a very low intellect and an inability to communicate.
Wow.
Ugh.
Harsh.
Cool.
Right.
Mm.
So it was actually when she was 18 years old that a very unfortunate event happened at the school she was attending. She really never goes into depth about what that was. But because of that, her mom retained a lawyer
Oh.
that was well versed in like kind of education law.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And at the time, her mom had introduced an iPad to Jordyn with just some very basic communication.
Yeah, yeah.
And Jordyn said it was a bit of a revelation because she saw this professional person interested in what she had experienced and what she had to say. So she said she can remember like just physically trying to like restrain herself, to control herself, to focus herself, to try to communicate to this person because she felt like for the first time
Somebody can help her?
somebody was trying to help or listen to her.
Oh my gosh.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Wow.
And with this lawyer's help, she was able to get another assessment through her school
Sweet.
that showed that she should be provided with ACC, which is augmentative and alternative communication.
Okay, gotcha.
So essentially, this is all the ways somebody can communicate besides speaking.
Okay.
Generally, augmentative means you're adding something,
Okay,
and alternative means you're providing a different avenue of speaking.
gotcha.
So like the kids I've worked with, they've had different kind of iPads,
Yeah.
communication devices. Frequently PEX is used, which is a picture system
Mhm.
for
Oh.
requesting what you want. I've had students that use buttons that are
Yeah.
pre-programmed with what they need. And if they have limited mobility, they can press that when they want that.
Nice.
So there's just, I mean, that's like a tip of an iceberg of different ways
Yeah.
somebody can communicate
Yes.
that isn't just verbally.
Yeah.
And she said that Jordyn said in early school she was provided with the PEX system,
Okay.
but that it was just very limiting.
Oh.
And
To
that
be able
was
to express
because she was
herself.
assumed to be of a very low intellect.
Mm.
And she said, you know, there's nothing wrong with having a low intellect,
Sure.
but just the school system did her a disservice by putting her in a box that wasn't, you know,
Yeah.
the place she needed to be. So once she got and learned how to type out her thoughts, her feelings, her communication, she got that iPad
Mhm.
where she was able to, you know, make elaborate thoughts, opinions, communications to other
Wow.
people.
Yeah.
And she ended up going from 18, when she was segregated from her community and her school, to achieving a bachelor's degree from
Whoa.
Ohio University.
Wow. From
She-
where?
Ohio University.
My alma mater.
Is it? Yes, she went to Ohio University.
Look at that.
And then she got a master's of education at Boston College.
Oh, wow.
So we're talking in a 10-year span.
Yeah.
She went from being segregated and doing simplistic math problems
Yeah.
to obtaining a bachelor's degree and a master's degree,
Oh,
which
my
are huge
gosh.
accomplishments for anybody
Oh,
in
yeah.
any
Mhm.
situation.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's truly remarkable, her accomplishments in life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that her focus has been on making education equitable
Mhm.
for all,
Yeah.
having a voice for all the students.
Mhm.
She actually works as I want to tell you her correct position.
Gotcha. Is she a teacher?
She's not a teacher.
Okay.
She's definitely an advocate, and she's kind of working behind the scenes.
Gotcha.
She's on the board for Communication First.
Okay.
Whose mission is to protect and advocate the rights, autonomy, opportunity, and dignity of people with speech-related disabilities through public engagement, policy and practice change, and systematic advocacy.
Oh, sweet.
She actually is the director of professional development at the NORA Project.
Okay.
The NORA Project is a nonprofit whose mission is to promote disability inclusion by empowering educators and engaging students and community.
Oh, nice.
So she hasn't become a teacher, but she's become somebody who's behind the scenes, training teachers how to work with people, individuals like her who are non-speaking.
Nice.
Yes, and she has a lot of great resources on her website that's good for anybody, even if they're not a teacher. She really breaks it down simplistic, and she said the 2 things she says you should do to support a non-speaking individual is to understand that everybody has language and wants to communicate.
Yes.
And number 2 is to always assume competency.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is it that hard that the default is competency? Oh my god.
Yeah.
Isn't that
Right.
That's a good way to assume.
Yeah.
Right.
the history of like the dumb and deaf schools?
Yeah.
And stuff? That's very cringe.
Institutionalism. Yeah.
So I haven't had the time to watch it yet, but she was actually featured in the 2021 documentary This Is Not About Me.
Oh, okay.
Which really featured a lot of her background.
Sweet.
About how she remembers being in school and having teachers speak in front of her about her being dumb or unable to do things or her disabilities.
Right there. Oh, man.
Painful.
Right.
Ow.
Right. So she says, and then one of the things, I listened to a podcast where she was on, and I thought it was beautifully done. I'll have to find it for the show notes you can do it. But it's a podcast that features people who have autism.
Oh, sweet.
And what they're doing. But it was really cool because the podcast actually agreed with her to allow the moments of silence while she processed and typed into her iPad what she had to say.
Right. They didn't cut it out for the
editing and stuff like that.
Cool.
Because the other thing that she's a huge advocate for is that, educating people who don't have non-speaking disabilities to leave room for people who are non-speaking to
leave
communicate.
that time. Absolutely. Yeah.
And I have to say, like, with my long career in special education, one of the things that has taken the most practice is leaving processing space for people, especially people who have autism need that almost a minute of processing time when you've said something or requested something. So shooting off your next thought, demand, whatever, is not respectful. Yeah. And it's not helping them be able to communicate meaningfully with you. Yeah. So she's huge into talking about that. But she's just truly remarkable.
Neat.
During her time at Ohio University, she also founded an inclusive collegiate cheer team called the Sparkles.
Oh, nice.
So you can find stuff about that online. It's super cool.
That's too cute.
Isn't it? And then in 2022, she was appointed to the President's Committee for People with Intellectual Disabilities.
Oh.
And she spends a lot of her time also being a prolific keynote speaker and has presented at conferences around the world.
Oh, sweet.
Wow.
And I really love what she has to say about Autism Acceptance Month.
Yeah.
She says that it should be about listening to the various voices that make up our community, disrupting ableism and systems of oppression, and calling for action. It's really about recognizing our right to be in spaces every single day and knowing we have worth.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Yes, she talks a lot about how her experience as, an adolescent in school was feeling like she had no worth and no ability to communicate her needs. And being able to communicate is a basic human right.
Right.
That everybody
Absolutely.
deserves to have. So to me, that's why I really hooked in with her and was passionate about sharing her with you because of all the work she's doing to make communication available to every person. Mm-hmm. So.
And I'm feeling this connection of, women finding their voice and how difficult it is to find, your voice and not have it shake beneath you. This is somebody who for 18 years
had no voice
and knows how important it is. So once she got it, that she didn't take a moment to lose of going without it, where, you know, many of us spend many times trying, well, if I could only find my voice and find what I feel and find what means something to me. And here's an example of try not having it at all.
Yeah.
And then realizing how important it is.
And we
That's
all
lovely.
need to practice listening to people better.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to be completely honest. When I was listening to the podcast and waiting for her to communicate her response to the questions, it got to the point that I was like, have I stopped playing? Is it still going?
Right.
I got a little fidgety. And
I think that's the
I'm
point,
just
right?
being honest,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
This is why she did what she did, so we can experience, like, the
You need to wait.
processing
Yes.
time,
Mhm.
the patience everybody should have, because it's important to hear all individuals. They all have something to contribute.
Yeah.
And I thought it was really cool. I'll send you the 19thnews.org
Okay.
interviewed Jordyn,
Yeah.
and they were asking about role models she had who were maybe other non-speaking individuals.
Yes.
And she said that it was actually when she went to an internship in Washington, D.C., that Judy Hewman connected her with two non-speaking individuals who are active in Washington, D.C.
Yes!
That became her role models.
That's why Judy is a freaking
Right?
treasure as well as Jordyn.
Right?
Yes. Oh my gosh.
So
Sweet.
Jordyn is young, only 28 years old, so I feel like we're going to be hearing
Imagine what she's
so
gonna
much more
do.
from her.
Yeah.
So I have a question.
Yes.
If these people around her just kind of assumed there was nothing going on,
Right.
with her in terms of intellect and language,
Mhm.
I mean, how did she pick up how to write?
From what I understand, I'm thinking like my own experience in special education is that very preschool kindergarten level can be very repetitive for kids who have developmental disabilities that they assume has low intellect.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm assuming she probably spent a lot of time with the alphabet, with learning some basic core words.
Mm-hmm.
But it was really once that lawyer became involved that she clued into the iPad as a way to communicate. And she went, I need to find it, but she went to a special institute that trained her how to communicate with the iPad.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So it was, because, a huge chunk of her education was missing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That she never got, that you would need to be able to type out and do things.
Mm-hmm.
And if you listen to that podcast with her, you'll see it is a very slow process.
Mm-hmm.
But she definitely has the word communication, spelling abilities. But I think it was that focus of that training when she was in that institute. So, because she definitely did jump from not communicating to a few years later college and master's degrees, but it's just
it still took some
I will
time in
say
between
this,
there. Yeah.
having worked with deaf people, there's a lot of deaf people that have language delays because people didn't, for some reason, they don't need sign language.
Right.
People just think that you can learn English.
Sure.
Even if you can't hear it.
The thought is, if you can't speak, then you don't know what's going on.
Right.
I feel like that's the default for a lot
Exactly.
of people.
So for a lot of people, once they finally are in an environment where there's sign language being used, where ASL is being used, they pick it up super fast.
It's a resource to
they're a sponge
freedom.
for it,
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so
I would imagine that happened with Jordyn as
Yes.
well.
You see it as an avenue for,
Yeah.
oh, wait, I can use
I'd be
that?
very
Yes.
curious to see her documentary for sure.
Absolutely.
I'm eager to
Yeah.
watch that. I haven't done it yet. I don't think it's available for free,
Gotcha.
but I have a feeling if you pay for it, you're definitely supporting a good cause.
Right.
Absolutely.
You can
Gotcha.
find it at her website, which is just hername.org.
Okay.
and what's her
Gotcha.
name again?
Her
Jordyn?
name is Jordyn Zimmerman, but it's a Jordyn.
Okay, she's got a Y in it.
Jordan.
Gotcha. You know what it also did make me think of is I watched a lot of documentaries with Stephen Hawking.
Yes.
I wonder how much of that delay was edited out.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
to
saying?
make it more palatable to all of us.
Because we a lot of times we're seeing these documentaries and and the different technology that we saw him use throughout time makes me wonder how much they took out that pause.
Yeah.
You know what I
True.
mean? And
True,
that is a
true.
lesson we could have learned in that pause, you know?
Well, I was
Um,
even talking to Josh about like how this was so hard for me in my special education career
Yeah.
to learn. And it wasn't because I didn't want to give that space,
Mhm.
but I wanted to be overly helpful.
Yeah.
So I'm
yeah.
like, okay,
You're
I'll
eager beaver to help.
request this or say this to you, but then I'm going to say it 3 different ways in case the way I said it the first time didn't make
Yeah.
sense. So I think it's a mindfulness exercise too, because as a society, we're just pushing
Going.
forward, going.
So one of the things
Let
I
it
learned
go.
while I was working with deaf people, I'm teaching college, I was teaching general education, public speaking and English and, all these other courses. And when I had deaf students, I would have interpreters.
Yeah.
And one of the things I had to get used to, because I get excited and then I'm
You're
talking
using
fast
your
or whatever.
hands. Yeah.
Well, I've always used my hands.
Same.
But there needs to be a lag time for them to be able
Yeah.
to, communicate all of what they say. So I learned to pause. I would say a
Yeah.
bit, and then I would pause, and I would, watch the interpreters. And when they finished what I had been saying,
Yes.
then I would
go.
say some more, and
Mhm.
then I would pause, and I just trained myself to pause. And
It's a breath almost, isn't it?
it's a little
I was
bit
gonna
more than
say
that.
sounds
Yeah,
so
but
easy
yeah.
the way you're describing it, but it's actually really
Yes.
hard.
Yes.
And that's not
The
how we're
thing-
naturally programmed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the thing
Yeah.
about hearing people, at least in the United States, is we get awkward when there is silence.
Yeah.
We are not taught to
Uncomfortable silences.
Yes. Yeah, we're not taught a way to enjoy a silence because it's never as long as we think it is.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And it's just a matter of pausing and allowing processing time
Yes.
or the interpretation or, whatever it
The
is.
completion of a
And-
thought.
Right. And so we don't learn pauses
Mhm.
generally, and we get awkward with pauses. We think we have to fill it.
Yeah.
And it is an exercise in self-patience
Mhm.
to learn how to be comfortable in the silence.
Yeah.
Right.
And not feel like we have to fill.
And that can be a lifelong
silence.
lesson.
and it took a lot of time.
Yeah.
Yes.
I won't even say I'm there 100% of the time, but I've definitely
I know I'm
am
not there.
so different than the person I was 10 years
Yes.
ago.
Yeah.
Yes.
In regard to that, in regard to
Exactly.
processing time and understanding processing time. I think there's statistics that individuals with autism can need up to a minute of processing time if
Yes.
you've asked a
That's
question
fair.
or made a request.
Yeah.
But have you ever tried to sit there and be silent with somebody for a full minute
Right. Only
when
toddlers.
you're having a conversation?
And
Yeah.
it's mostly like you have one more minute to play.
But it's a beautiful thing to
Mhm.
be able to do and train yourself to do because
Yes.
it leaves so much room for so many more people.
Give people that space.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, that's lovely. It's definitely mind fuel
Yeah.
for me to sit quietly.
We will all
and
contemplate.
process. Yes, exactly. Yes.
However, now
Yes.
I will close this down
I like
for
it.
the month.
Yes. There you go. Do
Okay.
it.
That wraps it up for Disability Pride Month. Join us next week as we set our sights high in the sky and celebrate aviation gals. We hope to see you soon at the Gals Guide Library, and thank you so much for listening.
For show notes, links, and images from this week's show, visit galsguide.org. Want exclusive stuff like deleted bits and major bloopers? Become a Gals Guide patron today. Thanks for listening.